Carolina returns back to the Dean Dome for the first time since before Thanksgiving. Of course, they were in the Fort Myers tip-off where they went 1-1 against St. Bonaventure and Michigan State. Then earlier this week went into Rupp Arena and got a hard-fought win over Kentucky. Now they turn around, play host to Georgetown in what is a home and home that will continue into next season. The Hoyas, on the other hand, they have shown immense improvements from what we've seen from them really since, like, I guess you could go back to 2021 when they snuck into the big dance, winning the Big East tournament. I think it was 5 games in 5 days. But even that year, they were like, what, 13-13? Weird season. This is probably their best start in what feels like eons, but maybe you can correct me on that, Matt. I know you follow this team closely, but Georgetown has had some nice wins, beat Maryland pretty handily, got a good one over Clemson that I think will age nicely. But they're coming off two hard fought losses in the Terry's Chocolate ESPN Invitational. Yes, that's a real showcase where they're playing down in Florida, where they dropped games against Dayton in overtime, in Miami, and a 13-point loss. So, some positives to take away if you're a Georgetown fan, although you probably want to see them continue to improve, particularly on the defensive side of things. Matt, you and I have done some Carolina games, covered some games that have happened in your area in the DMV. For all the Carolina fans watching, what do they need to know about this Georgetown team?
First of all, Terry's Chocolate Invitational. People are worried about Players Era killing MTEs, and that's what we're fighting to protect is the Terry's Chocolate Invitational. It's outrageous. Georgetown is really good defensively. It's a scrappy team. If you think of any like the really good vintage Ed Cooley Providence teams, this is much more in that mold. Like they're gonna get up in you. This would probably be a good game, honestly, to have a Seth Trimble for. So it's gonna be a test. Like I don't think you want like Derek Dixon being like the key ball handler in a game with KJ Lewis on the other team,
Yeah.
like hounding him around. Malik Mack is really coming to his own this year as an offensive player, and the defense has been better. They're just solid. They can't shoot at all, so they're gonna try to make this just like an ugly, messy rock fight. And they've been pretty good at it. The problem is when you can't shoot, you're gonna lose a couple close games, and that's what hurt them against Dayton, and they really just were never in it against Miami.
See, that's fascinating. You go with the defense first off, just like I would have assumed that was where they needed to shore it up a little bit just because they're coming in 112th in Kim Palm rankings and defensive efficiency. However, to your point with someone like KJ Lewis, I mean, he's someone you could follow the whole career trajectory where he started at Arizona where his calling card was defense. And I think you make a great point with even on the Carolina side of things where I would say they mostly have an identity at this point. It's basically play through Vasar and Wilson and hope that your guards give you enough to win. Like let those two dominate touches, let them run high low, and pray that Luka Bogovac, Derek Dixon, and Kyan Evans can give you collectively like 8 or 9 made threes. That's kind of what they've been thus far. However, I would say the big question mark for Carolina coming out of Kentucky is who is your point guard? Are you going to continue to try to pull off this Kyan Evans experience, which to excuse me experiment I should say like the Kyan
It's
Evans
an
point guard
experience
experiment.
too, though. Like it's a roller coaster at the very least.
Facts. I would have thought like second half against Kansas. I was like, okay, yeah, that's my point guard. This kid's hooping, and he's kind of disappeared since then. Had some nice shots against St. Bonaventure, but again, like we're talking about a middle of the pack A10 team. I don't really think that's what Carolina is aiming for in terms of the standard and in terms of the ceiling here. Whereas Derek Dixon, I thought just looked way more aggressive, way more comfortable, and I think just is a different pedigree of player than Kyan Evans. And I get that Evans had the big moment in the tournament last year against Memphis, but for the most part, he was the third option on Colorado State
Mhm.
last season, and he's just being. I think initially he came to Carolina to be that lead guard, but just against high major competition has not really looked capable of it. I think there are ways in which you can reduce his minutes, give a bigger role to Dixon, and see if you can put him in spots that are better going to help him out. But on the flip side, like you're saying with KJ Lewis, a guy who's always been known for defense, who's so tenacious on that side, particularly on ball, asking a freshman Derek Dixon to be the primary ball handler here, even at home against someone of Lewis's ilk, could be a tough night for him.
Yeah, that's just not what you want. That's not the way to do this. I saw this with a Maryland team that went in with three freshman point guards or three freshman guards, honestly, that started against Georgetown. And Maryland was down 10-0 before they even realized it. Like Maryland's point guard in that game got stripped at his own 3-point line on the first possession of the game for a pick six there. Like it's just not a good recipe, and it's not just uh, with Lewis. Like they go pretty deep in terms of actual like defensive minded guys, and I think
Hmm.
that's going to be honestly like just that's the real matchup for this one. Like everything comes down to the front court for North Carolina. You could say, but honestly, Georgetown's been okay in the front court. I think Halifanua's been better than I would have thought. The problem is they're just not deep. If he gets in any kind of foul trouble, this team gets really small. Vince Uichukwu was out for another couple weeks here, it looks like, and those were the only two like serviceable true bigs on the roster anyway. So I think if you're Carolina, just attack them and try to make them get as small as you possibly can quickly. Like they've got nobody that can guard Vasar if Halifanua gets in that quick foul trouble we mentioned, and he's picked up a lot of dumb fouls so far this year, and that's bit them. But on the flip side, I think this is advantage Georgetown in the backcourt, and
Hmm.
they they could kind of similarly attack those guards. So I think that's going to be like the fun matchup to watch. Is this really kind of two differently constructed teams here?
Yeah, that is my big question as a Carolina fan is who can stay in front of Malik Mack, who can stay in front of KJ Lewis.
Yeah,
That you go to the Michigan State game, and granted, Michigan State's on a different level right now, but Jeremy Fears shot 8 for 10 in that game and got wherever he wanted in the paint. Like it seemed like Carolina was I don't know if they were content or if it's just a bad scheme or bad execution, but that type of game plan has unfolded a lot in the past 5 years under Hubert Davis, where they're playing like a more conservative drop coverage, and they just give up shots to lead ball handlers in the mid range, and they usually knock them down.
mm,
Like that, I fear that same type of game script could unfold here, either for Mac, but I would even say like more notably with Lewis, two guys who can get downhill. I think Malik Mack has shot more free throws this year, been getting to the charity stripe at a greater clip. Neither one of them have like the best efficiency inside the arc, but I think they're good enough around the basket that they can make you pay, or put pressure on Caleb Wilson or Henry Vasar to stay out of foul trouble. And you saw that in the Kentucky game where the first half, it felt like Kentucky was getting into the paint at will with their guards, with their dribble penetration, and with there just not being much behind Vasar for UNC. Sometimes he plays a little conservatively, and
hmm
it seems like he holds back. And he's got such a big body and great mobility that he can be that rim protector. But if he doesn't feel that freedom to gamble on some blocks because of the need to stay out of foul trouble, then yeah, I think Georgetown could find an advantage there with the guard play.
think one of the few bright spots, in my opinion, from this Terry's Chocolate Invitational for for Georgetown, where they go 0-2, is playing at a Halifanoa in the high post was pretty productive for them, I would say. So that's another reason you need to go after him if you're North Carolina, is to try to get him out of the game from an offensive perspective too, because he can be a hub, and he's also a guy that
Mhm.
can draw some fouls. He's got good touch around the basket, so you can't really afford for Vasar to pick up any cheap ones on him either, or they get pretty small pretty quick too.
Yeah, I Halifanoa was a guy who I loved coming
I
out of
know
the
you did.
NBA
I remember
Academy.
that. I had no idea who he was until you mentioned him on the pod.
I was a massive Halifanoa believer. He was in my mind going to be a Tar Heel legend
Yep.
because UNC recruited him super hard, and
I
then
remember, yeah.
Georgetown pulled it off. And that like there's a post from a UNC Twitter account of a Halifanoa UNC jersey Photoshop that like did stupid numbers in July of
Right.
2024 because the fan base, we just collectively decided this was our answer in the paint last season when Carolina didn't really have a center. So it's kind of funny that he does end up getting a game in the Dean Dome just for a different team.
Yeah,
But
just a little late.
yeah, right. But yeah, I think he's someone where, if you go back and watch that tape when he was at the NBA Academy or any of his international footage, you saw that ability to make plays out of the pinch post and to
Mhm.
be that playmaking hub. I mean, he's coming off of a 4 assist performance at UMBC. I don't know if Carolina's really faced a big like that so far this season. Like looking at their schedule, that's not really Flory's game. I think
No.
Flory has developed that some. Like we did some of the players there recaps for Kansas, and he's improved a ton as a passer, but I wouldn't say you're running the offense through him. And Michigan State doesn't really have anyone like that in the front court. I don't think you'd classify Brandon Garrison in that mold by any stretch, or Malachi Marino. So it'll be fascinating to see if Carolina approaches its defensive approach, or that was redundant. If it alters its defensive approach against Halifanoa, just if he gets going a little bit offensively and can even make life easier on Mac and Lewis as they try to get downhill.
Yeah, the other thing too, like Georgetown's got some like switchable athletic guys in like the 6'4" to 6'7" range. And I don't think any of them are going to be guys that can really shut down Caleb Wilson.
Hmm.
Caleb Williams will be the one that has the best shot at doing it. I think he's a solid player, and I would say better than he looks from a box score perspective for the UNC fans who haven't seen him yet. He just kind of connects everything they do really well. He's enough of a shooter, he's enough of a passer, enough of a rebounder. Like he'll grab and go a little bit. So getting him in some foul trouble, I think would be big. But they do have guys that can at least pester Wilson a little bit. He wasn't crazy
Hmm.
efficient in that Kentucky game. So this would be the spot to have like Vasar have like a huge game because there's just really this is the one answer for him, and if you can get by him, you're in pretty good shape there.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great point. And even looking at what Vasar did down the stretch of Kentucky, where they let him go to work on the block a little bit more than we've seen
Yeah.
typically throughout his most productive year at Arizona a season ago, and even through the early stretch for Carolina, he's doing most of his damage as a roll man and getting him on the move. But to see him show some flashes of some post moves, I know that like probably don't want to give Henry Vasar. I don't. You're probably not trying to force him a post touch 10 times a game by any stretch, but to go to that 3 to 5 times a game and let him find ways to be successful, I think that's great news for Carolina, especially with how they've bogged down in the half court. And for me, I'll tell you what I'm looking most forward to seeing from a stylistic standpoint. Does Carolina push the tempo in this one?
Hmm.
Which you may hear that's like it's North Carolina. What are you talking about?
Sure.
They haven't really done that as much
Mhm.
as you'd like to see in recent years. And I mentioned this specifically because the first part of that Kentucky game, but really let's go into the second half when they hold the Cats to that 10-minute scoring drought yet couldn't gain any separation. They were forcing misses, looking like they were ready to push the pace.
Mhm.
They cross half court. They're looking over to the sideline to see Hubert signal in an offensive set, and it leads to it usually gets stuff snuffed out, and there's not a good shot that comes from it. And I'm left just wondering, like, when is Hubert going to let these dudes hoop? And I know people in the comments say I'm a pessimistic Carolina fan with that, but like, dude, we know. Like, what do you expect? This is what we grew up
Yeah.
watching is Carolina, that free flowing offense, the freelance, like getting if you weren't getting something in secondary, you're going into that freelance offense and find a shot another way. And Carolina actually got stuff going offensively when they pushed the tempo late second half against Kentucky. I want to see if they come out with that strategy from the jump this time around.
It's honestly just malpractice, I think, seeing how this roster is constructed. You have a big that's willing to pass it. He can get the rebounds. You have quick enough guards who could just take off. Wilson should be an elite finisher in transition. You would really simplify things for Evans that he doesn't have to run half court sets. He can just be a spot up shooter on the break. Like if Wilson even grabs and goes and starts the break himself, like I'd be cool with that. It would allow Bogovats to do more kind of like simple creating in one-on-one. He doesn't have to like get by guys that are set defenses. For
Mm-hmm.
Derek Dixon, that's really just a lot easier for him. He played in a fairly up-tempo Gonzaga team in high school, so to me he wasn't really like a point guard. He was more of a and he played with Nick Lewis, who was a guy that ran a lot of the offense too, and he was
Right.
more of like a spot up guy who could run some things. So for him, I think that would get back to his roots a little bit more too. So
Mm-hmm.
I just don't really understand the point. I don't feel like it's doing them any great like advantage defensively to have this like glacial pace at certain times. Like that Kentucky game especially, I felt that more than anything. It's like, dude, what do you do? Is it something Kentucky's doing to make them do that? I couldn't tell if that was like an intentional game plan thing or something they were
Mm-hmm.
forced into.
They've had turnover issues, particularly in the
Sure.
first half of games, so maybe that explains it. But to me, part of the turnover issues have been when they're playing tentative because they're looking to the sideline waiting for a play call to come
Yeah.
in. You see it with Kyan Evans all the time. There was Dickie V about lost his mind. I might have said this on the recap from that game. I can't remember, but Vasar had a post steal late in that game, and Kyan Evans is ready to give him the entry pass, and then he second guesses and just swings the ball around the perimeter. And,
Hmm.
and I felt terrible for Vasar. It's like, dude, you're working so
It
hard
did
to
all
gain
that work. Yeah.
position to gain position here, and no one's going to find you. I think Dixon hopefully can, but yeah, to your point with him being more of a combo than a true point. do I got some good news for you. I got a coach that loves himself a combo guard.
There
So
you go.
if you can pick any identity for the Hubert Davis era so far, I would say combo guards who love to shoot. I think Dixon has a little bit more balance to his
It is.
game and just coming out of a great high school program and playing for Team Takeover, which seems like they do nothing but develop pros.
Mhm.
I think Dixon's going to be up for the task. And I wouldn't say you completely give up on Kai and Evans, but you're probably cool with him playing 20 minutes a game and just telling him, like, just go out there and worry about spotting up and knocking down threes. Be a secondary playmaker. You don't have to be the one getting guys involved. Like, that's going to be what Derek does. And you might take some lumps with it, but hopefully when you have as good of a front court as Carolina does, they have a little a higher margin for error where they can bail you out.
If you're Evans, like you got to know your own personnel about yourself. Like you're basically a system quarterback who ran a really smart offense for a really smart offensive coach in Nico Medved, and then you choose to go do whatever Hubert is trying to do. I just don't understand that choice other than it's Carolina, and if they want you, it's hard to say no to that as a basketball player and basketball fan. But I don't know. I would try to make things easier for him and just simplify as much as you can. And also, I don't think you want to play against this set Georgetown defense either. Like they're going to be good in transition too, but they also don't turn the ball over a lot. This Georgetown team less than 9 a game, but they score a lot on the turnovers they face. They're like 19 or 20 a game, somewhere in that ballpark. Don't have it up handy, but they were in that before Terry's Chocolate. They're down to 18 a game, so scoring a little less off turnovers after that tournament run, but they want to swipe you and they want to take off. And
Mhm.
for a team that is a little more offensively challenged, they're not good in the half court. So they might look okay from like a Ken Pom offense perspective, but it's
Mhm.
because they're getting free points like that. So if you can protect the ball and limit their free points, I think this is going to be advantage Carolina overall here. I know, but that's not really a prediction, Riley. How are you feeling about this one overall?
Yeah, I would say there's this is like sometimes when I make predictions, it's hard for me to not let my normal
Sure.
fan anxiety weigh in, where it's like, oh, I don't know how Carolina's going to stop these guards and their ability to force turnovers and get runouts. Like there is a world where Georgetown opens this game up on like a 12-4 run or something because Carolina is just wasting possessions. And but even if that happens, I trust, like based on what we've seen from Carolina in the second half of games, really all season, they tend to clean it up. I don't know what it is. Hopefully they like because they haven't been getting down in the first half like they did last year. So there's a positive if you're a UNC fan. I think that's probably a testament to how good Wilson and Vasar are. They just raise the floor and with their size and athleticism give you again a higher margin for error. But sometimes it's like it takes 20 minutes for their guards, whether it's Kyan, whether it's Luca, whether it's Derek Dixon, to realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't waste possessions and just give the ball to their team. To where I would still trust Carolina to ultimately prevail. I think Georgetown makes. There's like my heart wants to say this is when Carolina shows you that they can be a top 10 team.
There
When
you go.
they show you why they beat Kentucky and Kansas in the same season for the first time since 1982, and they go out there and win by 20. My head tells me not so fast. Like I think Georgetown keeps this close really until probably the 8 minute mark, maybe even the 5 minute mark in the second half when Carolina pulls ahead by either some highlight plays from Caleb Wilson, maybe another big shot from Luka Bogovac or Derek Dixon, something like that. And I think UNC probably I can see this being the type of game where they salt the contest away at the free throw line and end up with a 9 or 10 point win, even though the game is closer than that.
I was going to go 84-75, so I really like the 9 point shout there.
There we
That's
go.
kind of similar to that Kansas score line in that general range of things. I just not willing to root against or bet against a Caleb Wilson team because it just when you have the best player on the floor, which and KJ Lewis is really good on the other side of things, but Caleb Wilson is just a special player to me, and I
Mhm.
think that's just advantage UNC that I think that's going to be really hard for them to mitigate. So
Yeah,
feeling good for you guys.
with you on that. If you're a Georgetown fan, just if you lose this one, crack open a Terry's dark chocolate orange, eat away your pain and sorrow. Because better days are ahead. This is a good team.